Russia shocked the entire world when it threatened to invade Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022 with a military force of nearly 180,000 soldiers. It was a move that no one had expected, and when it turned into reality, almost every nation in the world, except for a few, supported Ukraine in the war and stood against Russia. However, it wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision for Russia. The country has been preparing for this moment for more than a decade and has spent billions on strengthening and advancing its military system, solidifying Russia's influence all over the world, and stabilizing the country's economy. Giving the orders for the invasion was the last step in Putin's play, but while he was waiting for the good news and preparing his victory speech, things started going wrong. Ukraine fought back way stronger than Russia thought it would. Not only did they garner the support of the most powerful nation in the world, the United States of America, and use the country's intelligence to dissuade Russia from taking over Kyiv, but they also controlled the war's narrative and led the entire world to boycott Russia. So what impact has the war caused on the Russian economy? How is Russia coping with the sanctions imposed on the nation by the West? And for how long is left before the collapse of the country? After the invasion, almost all leading foreign companies started departing from Russia. For instance, BMW stopped its production of cars in Russia, and global companies such as Google, Netflix, IBM, PayPal, Airbnb, Visa, Samsung, MasterCard, Coca-Cola, and Starbucks all boycotted Russia overnight. Not only companies but banks, too, exerted an effect on Russia. The country's banks were eliminated from the global financial system, making sending money from Russia or to Russia impossible. As a result, many experts have predicted that the country's economy will eventually collapse, which is way worse than inflation. And let's not forget about the progression of financial attacks that the United States of America initiated on the Russian ruble. The value of the ruble dropped by almost half. It went from $1 equals 70 rubles to $1 equals 140 rubles within a very short period. America launched this attack on Russia with a fixed objective. The country knew that if the value of the Russian currency was weakened, the economy would become more vulnerable and might even collapse. So America prohibited the government of Russia from amassing foreign currency and pressured American companies to depart from Russia. So, companies started selling everything they retained inside Russia and traded all their Russian rubles to buy dollars. This led to the Russian ruble being traded at half price, and hence the value of the ruble dropped. This is not the first time the United States of America has put Russia through this. Back in 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea, Russia witnessed America's wrath. So this time, Russia already had a foolproof plan. The country had already saved almost $630 billion in foreign reserves to prevent this situation. So even if the Russian ruble was sold by everyone else, the Central Bank of Russia could generate sufficient demand for it, preventing it from collapsing. However, Russia didn't stand still. The country also retaliated back. It took various countermeasures and prohibited the use of foreign currency inside the country, which meant that people couldn't withdraw foreign currencies from ATMs. Neither was it possible to keep them in bank accounts because of the 12% fee Russian banks imposed on keeping foreign currencies in the country's bank accounts. This led to people selling their foreign currencies, such as dollars and euros, creating considerable demand for the ruble. In addition to this, foreign currencies attained by businesses inside the country would also be exchanged for the Russian ruble automatically, which also led to an increase in demand for ruble. So this is how Russia saved its economy from collapsing. The economy of Russia has slowly transformed into a diverse market-oriented economy from being a planned economy. The country has vast natural resources, mainly natural gas and oil. According to statistics, Russia is Europe's fourth biggest economy and the ninth biggest in the world in terms of nominal GDP. And the broad geography of the country plays an important role in the nation's economic activities. In fact, Russia holds a major share of the overall natural resources in the world, so the country is often referred to as an energy superpower. Russia amasses Europe's biggest oil shale reserves, is the world's largest natural gas exporter and comes second in exporting natural gas. The country has a labor force of around 70 million people and is the world's second biggest exporter of ammunition. The gas and oil sector accounts for more than 40% of the country's federal budget revenue. However, this is just the beginning. The country's economy is expected to turn worse. In addition, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia will soon turn the country haywire. We have mentioned that the country's geography is its strength but also a weakness. Most of Russia's population is situated in the country's western region. So the ports present in the eastern region at Vladivostok are not useful because the commute time from Vladivostok to Moscow is 9 hours by flight. Therefore, delivering goods and services from Vladivostok to the country's western region is quite problematic. On top of this, the whole region is not properly developed and lacks adequate infrastructure. The northern region also isn't in great condition. Moreover, the weather is freezing most of the year, making it impossible for ships to go through or even the settlement of any major cities because the cold makes it extremely difficult for people to survive. After St. Petersburg was made the new capital of Russia, it brought access to the Baltic Sea and provided the country with a way to trade with Europe. Despite this, the country was still at Sweden's mercy because it could easily block Russian ships while crossing through the Danish route. Russia is well aware of this fact. This is why the nation has maintained a decent relationship with Sweden. But that doesn't mean that Russia isn't looking for other alternatives for trading with the world. The best option was if the Russian ships crossed through the Bosphorus Passage to gain admission into the Mediterranean Sea, but it is now regulated by Turkey, our NATO member. This means that since Sweden joined NATO, Russia's situation has become quite grim. This makes Russia heavily dependent on the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to gain access to the oceans. If NATO wants, it retains the power to block the access of Russian ships through the oceans, which will hamper Russia's trade significantly and ultimately harm the country's economy. And what if Ukraine wins the ongoing war? Then Russia won't have access to even Crimea, therefore limiting the nation's influence in the Black Sea and making the country actually landlocked. As we have mentioned, the majority of Russia's economy comes from supplying raw materials, including gas, wood, oil, and other important things that Western Europe requires for the industries to keep running. For example, German factories won't be able to survive for long without affordable gas. And before Russia invaded Ukraine, the majority of Europe's gas supplies were supplied by Russia, and the country has spent billions of dollars on building the pipelines required for supplying Europe with gas. However, the nation halted its supply to convince Europe to side with Russia in the war between Russia and Ukraine. But the country didn't succeed in its motive. Europe started expanding billions of dollars instead in diversifying the continent's energy sources and even signed various multi-billion-dollar deals with some other major gas-exporting nations, like Qatar. This means that the war will not affect the fact that Russia will lose its opportunity to export oil and gas to Europe like it did in the past. This will have a direct impact on Russia's budget, and even though the country has been trying to sell its resources to countries such as India and China, it will not be the same as Europe because of two major reasons. First, neither of them will pay Russia the premium Europe did for gas, and second, Russia does not amass the resources to construct new pipelines once again for supplying to China. Even if Russia wins the war, it will annex a completely damaged country that requires rebuilding. But the war has already led to the depletion of Russia's resources, so even this is not the best outcome. So, in the end, no matter which country wins the war, Russia's economy will most likely fall because of the war it started with Ukraine and will not take too long.